Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Chris McCabe at e-commerce Chris, talking suspension trends, giving some expert insights because most recently I've noticed an increase in the number of people saying I've been doing this for years or months and Amazon's giving me a hard time about it now. They've taken my listings down or my full account down. I don't understand why something I've been doing for years is suddenly a problem. Now that has been a common story on the forums, on groups for years. I understand that. There's an increase of it because I think selective enforcement by Amazon teams is on the rise. That's one explanation. There's also still, unfortunately, a large group of sellers that fundamentally don't understand how to appeal things. So if it's a dispute situation where Amazon takes their listings or their whole account down in error, some people are still sending in a plan of action for things, taking responsibility for things that are very vague or that didn't happen simply because that's their understanding of the appeals process. And they think they have to capitulate and go through all these steps and promise all these things just to get their listings back up or their account back up. And that's their main objective. So they just, swallow the pill and take that initial beating, even if it's not really accurate, just because they think it'll fix it. So that's become much more of a problem this year versus last, because most of the time, Amazon's not even asking for a plan of action. But if it's an Amazon error or mistake, it's a much more clear-cut path to appeal it. You're sending in a dispute. Amazon refers to it as a dispute. We call it a dispute appeal. Essentially, you're challenging the validity of the action taken. And 2, 3, 4 years ago, they didn't have it as prominently phrased or stated on the suspension messaging. The deactivation messages didn't necessarily say, if you need to appeal this as an error, do this. So that's the good news. Now you can see that. You can get a path to appealing it and disputing it. But a lot of people are struggling with the inconsistency of enforcement, partially because of their poor appeals, poor communication skills, and they're sending in the wrong kind of appeal. So that's one reason you'll see several sellers doing something that is not compliant with policy and others aren't. Some of them are appealing in different ways that aren't very successful and are not including the right kinds of information. But there are also numerous instances of inconsistent enforcement where Amazon is simply not noticing that other sellers are doing what you're doing. You were flagged because Amazon tools flagged you, or someone reported it. They saw what you were doing. They reported you. It's a valid report of listing violations. Let's say ASIN creation violations or ASIN variation misuse, or even evidence of review manipulation. Things like that are also rampantly, inconsistently enforced. But why is that? There are numerous sellers that are doing what you're doing. You're getting caught and they are not. They might eventually get caught, and who knows, you might be the one to report them. But it's important to just begin that thought process and begin your strategy by thinking, I cannot blame Amazon for taking action on some of us, but not others, when we're all doing the same thing. They might not have gotten around to those people yet. So you can see why that appeal strategy won't hold water. If you appeal showing these live links, maybe they will take action on these people who are doing things wrong the same way you were. But 2 wrongs don't make a right. They're not going to suddenly restore your ASINs or your selling privileges just because you are able to find live listed examples in the marketplace at any given moment. There could be tons of violations, right? Amazon never tells the public, the government, sellers, buyers, anybody that they have this all locked down and that the second a policy is violated, that gets reviewed, that listing gets taken down, or that seller gets blocked. They've never promised that. They always say we have an open platform. We can act on reports that we receive. We can use certain amounts of automation and AI to do things that human beings cannot do. Sometimes sellers report other sellers. Sometimes buyers report sellers, but they're never going to promise, at least not anytime soon, that they will have the whole marketplace locked down from bad behavior, listing violations. And of course, we all know with the advent of black hat sellers, black hat tactics numerous years ago, sellers know how to find and exploit loopholes. Sometimes there are entire groups or masterminds or, hidden Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups, Signal or Telegram communities devoted to black hat tactics, right? We all know that. And we also know that historically, in terms of abuse prevention, Amazon's been very slow to join those groups and very slow to identify those types of behaviors. In numerous instances, I think there was an article maybe last year or 2022 where CNBC went into one of these groups and found all these documents being faked or information leaking from inside Amazon and getting into the hands of one or two members of these groups who then sell that type of information to other members in the groups. Some of those groups weren't even private, right? So Amazon knows this is going on. You should know it's going on because some of your competitors might be doing it. It means that, yes, abuse reporting has to happen. You need to report people who are breaking the rules. But it also means on your side, you have to have everything compliant, buttoned up, know the listing policies. If you need compliance reviews, either by your own teams or by people you hire outside the company, you have to consider setting aside some budget for that. And also making sure they do a good job, right? Fact checking their work, not just assuming that their work is infallible, because this is going to be a bigger deal. This is very important in terms of product and safety compliance, for example. The CPSC announcing and deciding that they are going to hold Amazon accountable for the product safety, product quality on their website, on their marketplace. What does that mean for you as a brand owner, business owner? It means that Amazon might come knocking on your door for documentation, for testing results, right? They're going to be looking at how you put your listings together to see if any of the info is misleading, if they think you're trying to cheat a little bit, or if they think you're trying to get an edge over your competition by fudging some information or by exploiting certain keywords, using some of these so-called seller hacks that you might have heard about on YouTube or at a seller conference. They're not going to take kindly to these explanations once they catch you breaking the rules. You have to expect to get fully suspended, not just on the ASIN level, fully suspended at that point, and having to appeal, where they may say something like, you can't appeal this with a plan of action. You can't apologize. You can't take accountability after the fact. You can't write a plan of action for this. We're not even asking for a plan of action. Often now they tell you, you need to dispute the validity of the action we took. Prove to us that we made a mistake. And if you can't do that, you're going to have certainly a much tougher time getting reinstated. And in some cases, they won't reinstate you at all. So it's important to know the consequences of employing some of these hacks or tricks. You can't just say, we found out about this at an event. We didn't know. Ignorance was bliss. We thought we'd get more sales. You have to understand that Amazon knows that policy enforcement is inconsistent. They know that they'll punish some people and let others go for the same types of crimes, right? If you want to consider listing violations crimes, sometimes they are for the same offenses. And they're not going to apologize for that. And they're not going to give you a good explanation, even if you've got an account manager, SAS score, somebody you're paying $5,000 a month for. If you complain to them, sure, they can flag this internally. They can ask around. No one's going to give you a great explanation. You are still going to have to go through the appeals process. You'll still be punished. You'll still regret doing this because you're probably losing tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales. So you got to be careful about this, right? You have to think twice before you employ any of these things. And you have to know that you're never going to be able to blame competitors for getting away with things and whining that you should be able to get away with those things too. The tools, whether they're automated tools, whether they're listing flags, AI that they're using, experimental AI, whether it's manual reviews where investigators, seller performance team members, like I used to be, whether they're looking at it or whether it's automation, there's going to be tons and tons of inconsistency. It's pretty much well known at this point that Amazon teams communicate very poorly with each other in a lot of cases. Sometimes on the senior levels, executive levels, you escalate it appropriately, and some of those senior level managers are communicating with each other. There might be a better chance that they're on the same page, a better chance that there's not so much misinformation and that they're taking the right actions, but you can't really rely on that, right? You probably put a lot of time, money, effort, and energy into your brand, and you're going to have to be a lot more careful about those types of things going forward. So in conclusion, do not count on making an excuse. We were doing things that other people were doing. They're doing it. Why can't we do it? That's never going to fly. Make sure you're running a tight ship and running a clean operation. Any questions on this? Follow up with us at e-commerce Chris, and happy selling. Thank you.